Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 144 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. This week's episode is inspired by the kind of conversation that got me doing this show in the first place. Without going into the whole story of why this was brought up, I mentioned in conversation that I only owned 2 red shirts in my life. One with a Flash logo and one with the Legion of Superheroes logo. This made one of my coworkers ask, who are the Legion of Superheroes? And so we answer that question now, going through all of their various reboots. I mentioned them briefly last episode, where I discussed the Legion of Super Pets, but now let's start at their beginning. The Legion of Superheroes first appeared in DC Comics during the Silver Age, in Adventure Comics number 247, written by Otto Binder with art by Al Plastino. In this story, Superboy was approached by 3 young time travelers from the 30th century who were inspired by his heroic adventures to become superheroes of their own. Their leader was Cosmic Boy, aka Rock Kryn, able to create and manipulate magnetic fields. Originally, this power emanated from his eyes, but this was later changed to be a sheer mental ability. The second member was Garth Rands, better known as Lightning Lad. Lightning Boy in his first appearance, but again, this was quickly changed. As his name suggests, he can create electricity and do all sorts of stunts with it. Finally, Imra Ardeen, also known as Saturn Girl, has telepathic abilities. Another quality they shared with Superboy is that none of them were born on Earth, being from the planets Brawl, Winath, and the moon of Titan, respectively. Cosmic Boy and Saturn Girl's power were both native to their species, while Garth gained his in an accident. The 3 invited Superboy to become an honorary member of the team, bringing him back with them to the 30th century. In this first tale, they made Superboy audition for the team, but secretly sabotaged him so that he lost each of the 3 contests, one against each team member. However, they revealed the prank at the end, congratulating him on being a good sport about his losses. Superboy would frequently join the team of adventurers, and the ranks of 30th century members also grew. Most of the members in this original version of the team had codenames involving some diminutive or another, such as boy, girl, lad, and lass. So characters like Phantom Girl, Colossal Boy, Shadow Lass, Invisible Kid, and others joined the team. Part of the rules of the group were that each member have their own unique superpower. So Garth's twin sister Ayla didn't join the group until after Lightning Lad's death, taking over as Lightning Lass. When Garth came back from the dead, Ayla was given new powers of anti-gravity and became Light Lass. By the time the original iteration of this team ended in 1994, with some soft reboots mixed in there that we'll talk about in a second, there were literally dozens of members. The combination of the huge roster and the fact that the stories took place in the 30th century and were thus mostly untied to the rest of the DC universe gave the writers freedom to take the characters in all sorts of unique directions, with some characters dying and being replaced, as in Lightning Lad/Lass and later Pharaoh Lad's death, changing powers, and all sorts of romantic entanglements between various members, all while protecting the United Planets, the 30th century equivalent of the United Nations. It probably helped that a then 14-year-old Jim Shooter, later editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, was hired to write the book, giving it an authentic teen feeling, although the editors didn't know Jim's age until after they offered him the job. Over the years, they appeared in stories in Adventure Comics, then as backups in Action Comics and Superboy, before finally getting their own dedicated title when Superboy became Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes with issue number 231. In issue number 259, Superboy left the team and the book was renamed again to simply The Legion of Superheroes, and it stayed that way even after Superboy returned. Now, in 1985, Crisis on Infinite Earths happened. Go back to episode 1 for more details on that and other reboots I'll reference in this episode. In the new post-Crisis continuity, Superman had no longer been a hero as a teenager, so his adventures as Superboy were retconned out of existence. In order to explain the hero's existence in their past, it was retconned that the Superboy that had been in the Legion was actually from a pocket dimension created by a Legion villain known as the Time Trapper. The pocket dimension Superboy died at the end of that story to keep the edict of only one Kryptonian survivor that DC's editor had laid down at the time. So, despite the universal reboot of Crisis, the Legion kept going. However, new plotter/penciler Keith Giffen, with scripts by Tom and Mary Bierbaum, moved the Legion forward in time, aging up the teens to young adults in a run referred to as the 5 Years Later era, that was so popular a second title, named Legionnaires, was launched. At the same time, the higher-ups at DC insisted that all references to Superboy be entirely removed from the book. And so a retcon was introduced that changed Superboy's place on the team to being a character named Mon-El, a Daxamite who has similar powers, but who has a reaction to common lead the same way that Superman's exposure to kryptonite affects him. Other retcons quickly followed, eventually making things so convoluted that it was decided to reboot the team entirely. The reboot era of Legion was kicked off by the 0 Hour crossover, which gave the rest of the DC universe a soft reboot, but the two Legion titles, while keeping their numbering, started the story of the super team back at their very beginning. With 2 dedicated books and a long history to mine, writers Tom McGraw and Mark Waid, with artists Stuart Immonen and Jeff Moy on Legion and Legionnaires respectively, told the whole story of the creation of the team, starting with the founding 3 and building the rest bit by bit as characters were recruited or volunteered to join the team. I'll be honest, this is my Legion. I got into the title shortly after the reboot, when some of the team landed in the 20th century and crossed over with titles I was already reading, and have since gone back to get every single issue of this run. The way the writers paid homage to classic stories while putting a modern spin on it and adding their own unique twists, making them go in unexpected directions, was the perfect combination of Silver Age nostalgia and current sensibilities for me, with a beautifully clean, cartoony style from both artists. Nearly every Legion character eventually showed up in one form or another over the years, although many code names were changed to remove most, if not all, of the Lad and Lass superheroes. Lightning Lad became Livewire, his sister was named Spark, Shadow Lass became Umbra, and so on. In addition to the classic characters returning in reimagined forms, new characters like XS, the granddaughter of Barry Allen, Gates, an insectoid with teleportation powers, and Monstrous, a green super strong woman but with a fashion sense to die for. This era of the Legion is also known as the Circle Era, because the two titles, Legion of Superheroes and Legionnaires, were basically telling one long story between them. And so, in addition to the issue number on the cover, there was also a number in a stylized circle that showed in what order to read the books. For someone like me, who got a number of these as back issues, that was very important to understanding what was going on. This iteration of the Legion got their own 5 years later type story, where things took a dark turn when Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning took over as the writers. In their arc, they broke the United Planets apart, and they ended the two ongoing titles with half the Legion disappearing along with part of their satellite headquarters into a spatial rift. In the miniseries titled Legion Lost, we found that half of the team on the other side of the galaxy without the technology needed to get back home. That 12-issue mini chronicled their effort to return. Then we got a miniseries called Legion Worlds, which showed the rest of the team attempting to put the United Planets back together. Once both these stories concluded, the team got an ongoing series again, simply titled The Legion, which ran for 38 issues. Interestingly, one of the team members for a time was Superboy, albeit the Superman/Lex Luthor clone who goes by the name Connor Kent. After a brief period in comic book limbo, the team once again was rebooted, leading to this being known as the Threeboot version. Writer Mark Waid, who, as you'll remember, co-wrote the original Reboot for some time, returned, taking a very different approach to the title, which was drawn by Barry Kitson. In this version of the 31st century, since our calendar had moved up to the 21st century from the 20th, the Legion's time period was also moved up. The worlds lived in a very socially distant way, with people talking to each other on screens even when they were in the same room. Touch and sensuality were seen as negatives, and the Legion rebelled against that, like the teenagers they were. So, in addition to their goal of protecting the people of the United Planets, the team also wanted to try to create social change. Many teens agreed with the Legion's message, and the team's headquarters was constantly surrounded by a vigil of dedicated followers, which helped protect the team from authorities who didn't want to be seen attacking innocent, peaceful teenagers. As part of their retro attitude, this Legion returned to the classic boy, kid, lad, and lass code names. But there were still some interesting twists on the characters, differentiating them from either of their previous versions. For instance, Phantom Girl, who had the power to phase, similar to Kitty Pryde in earlier continuities, now actually lived in two different dimensions, able to exist in both simultaneously, which gave her her phasing abilities, but also led to her having conversations with the people of the other dimension while still in the world the rest of her team lived in. This continuity lasted for 50 issues, an impressive run for the time. Writer Tony Bedard replaced Mark Waid and added Supergirl to the team for a time, and then longtime Legion writer Jim Shooter returned at issue number 37. The final issue is credited to Just in Time, a pseudonym usually reserved for uncredited artists, so who actually wrote that final issue is a bit of a mystery. But it ended with the team in a fairly happy place, with Brainiac 5 rescuing the minds of various teammates who had been trapped in a virtual reality, as well as Dream Girl, the woman he loved. Over in regular DC continuity, the worlds were once again rebooted with Infinite Crisis, restoring the multiple Earths, albeit only 52 rather than the infinite number of pre-Crisis. This also restored the original pre-Crisis Legion back into continuity. In this version of DC history, Clark Kent had once again been Superboy in his youth, and spent some of his time in the 30th century with his friends in the Legion. So the Silver Age Legion was once again canon. In fact, less than a year later in the miniseries Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, every version of the Legion was restored to canon, albeit from different Earths. all three teams got together in order to defeat Superboy Prime, a long story, the Legion of Supervillains, and Time Trapper, and also resurrected a dead Bart Allen, aka Impulse, in the process. The Reboot version of the team, as they're sometimes called, got their own title in 2010. Written by Paul Levitz, with art by Yildiray Cinar. Then, with the New 52 in 2011, the book was restarted at issue 1. Although it was the same team as before, being one of the few titles that did not have a hard reboot mandated. That series lasted for 23 issues, cancelled in 2013, and ended with the team being disbanded by the United Planets. We saw that team again in the Infinitus Saga arc in Justice League United in 2014, where they reformed and teamed up with the Justice League to save both the present and the future. Since then, the team was once again rebooted in a 12-issue miniseries that I believe was originally planned to be an ongoing but ended up cancelled after a year. Unlike previous reboots, this team appeared fully formed and apparently already had a rich history and a full roster, as written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Ryan Sook. Our POV character for this reintroduction to the future was John Kent, the teenage son of Lois and Clark, also known as the Superboy of the Rebirth era of DC Comics. He was invited by the Legion to join them in the 31st century, right after he had helped found the United Planets in the 21st century. In this version, Earth is no longer an intact planet, but is bits and pieces held together by technology. While that sounds like a dystopian future, it's presented optimistically, as Earth has survived and actually thrived in their own way, despite all of the troubles along the way. Currently, there are no plans that I'm aware of for a new, or old, Legion team to star in their own comic book. However, just 2 days from now, as this is released, you can watch a Legion of Superheroes animated movie, featuring Supergirl going forward in time to join the Legion Academy in order to help learn to control her powers better. Like most adaptations, it seems like it will take bits and pieces from all over Legion's various continuities to tell the kind of story they're looking to tell. You can check it out on various streaming platforms or get it on physical disc if you prefer. And I'm sure that one day we'll be seeing the young team from the future on the pages of the comics once again. And so I'll end with the very appropriate battle cry from the team: Long live the Legion! As I mentioned, this episode was inspired by a conversation at work. But what I really like to do is answer questions directly from listeners like yourself. If there's anything you'd like to hear me discuss, be it related to comic books, board games, or any other geeky topic, please send them my way. My email address is welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, or Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown@mastodon.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them, Welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.